sweet bread, that Dutch bread that you always make. And is there some of that baked eggplant on the stove too? Oh, I can't wait to taste it. I love that food that you make. Stella, could I have some tea, please? Have a seat. I really need to talk, and you're such a good listener. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. Well, it's done. The Women's Club just purchased the Josiah Funk home. It's at 5th and Cumberland Streets, and they paid $18,000. It's quite a sum of money, isn't it? But it's going to provide a home for women, a place for them to congregate and support each other. You know, there's rooms upstairs for let. So if someone becomes a widow or homeless, we can maybe give them a discount and make sure they have a place to stay. And downstairs there's this wonderful big room where we can have meetings and socials. I feel closure on this. I look back on my life, and I know how blessed I am that God provided for me. Financially, between Papa and Horace, I have no worries in the world. And I was even able to contribute a couple of $1,000s towards the purchase of the Women's Club. And I guess I have to say thanks to Granddad as well. Yes, Robert W. Coleman. Quite the man, wasn't he? He got us all started in this whole business of iron back during the Revolutionary War. And over the years, this family has entertained presidents like George Washington. Did you know that? He did. And Milton Hershey was here one time too. Great big businessman, you know. And did you know that my daddy, G. Dawson Coleman, actually got a letter from President Lincoln? It's true. He has it stored in the vault behind the bookcase, but I'm not supposed to tell anyone. So you have to take that to the grave with you, okay? Okay. Well, he was appointed to represent the interest of the Americans in the industry of all nations in London, England. Grandpa would be proud of his son James, and now his grandson George Dawson, who continued the family business. Well, my papa, George W., was born the year that Grandpa Robert W. died. So, you know, I often heard that God takes care of procreating the earth, and as the older people pass, the younger ones come on. So I guess it's true. But at this time in my life, I want to help women understand that we need to step back from the jobs that women held during World War I, when so many men went off to war and women filled the employment gap. These women are going to start having babies with the husbands home, and the men are going to have to hold down those jobs and support the families. Ephesians 4:15 gave me the strength to speak up about these things. Speak the truth in love. We will grow up into Him who is the head, that is Christ. I sure have lived a good life. You do know that my mom and dad gave me this home we're sitting in as a wedding gift, right? Dad was the most generous man, and he had a deep personal interest in the religious welfare of his employees, even erected and supported churches throughout the community. His life was an example that I've tried to follow. That's one of the reasons Christ Church down the hill was built. That was back in, I think, 1870, and I was about 12 years old. With Mom's Sunday school class, our porch used to get so full of women. They kept growing and growing. But when it rained and the wind blew, they got all wet. And then when it got cold outside and the winter set in, brr, just too cold to be out there. So Mom said, building a church for the employees was the least we could do. God's so good. Oh, Mom, how I miss you. You were such a kind soul. She really was. I still have that scissor book that we worked on together. But at age 65, these old hands just aren't as nimble as they once were. And I don't cut designs anymore. Memories. And in 1867, I remember, there was this 93rd Regiment of Volunteers. Over between 7th and 8th Street was the encampment. Mom and other prominent ladies in the area raised $1,000 to erect a monument in their honor and in memory of all Lebanon County soldiers and sailors who died in service to our country. Even the county commissioners chipped in $5,000. Can you believe it? Well, ironically, the base was adorned on all four corners with cannonballs, 25 on each corner, 100 all total. And then when I was about 14, there was a newspaper started here in Lebanon. And the following year, they started building those high-quality Miller organs. In fact, when Horace and I got married in St. Luke's in 1878, the event was covered in that newspaper. But we had the grand pipe organ playing instead of a Miller organ. The next year, only 1 year later, my son, John Penn, was born. Then along came Deborah. My children brought me such great joy. Remember how my grandchildren and your children used to play all the time? They were inseparable. You, Armour, your son, and Myrtle, your daughter, well, you were just a threesome. And they were such good children. I've never forgotten how they cried when they had to go home at the end of a visit on a weekend. They'd load up on that train back to Lickdale, that Lebanon and Tremont. I think they called it L&T for short, if I'm not wrong. And every weekend, they'd go back home again to Grandma and Grandpa. And you'd be here, and I'd see tears, and my heart was broken for you. There was so much love, and I never regretted offering them a permanent place to stay here in this home with us. Their faces, another time, I can remember this to this day, sure lit up. Horace called them upstairs, and he gave them each a Hershey kiss. And inside, there was a $5 bill. Well, they thought it was $1 million. Armour was such a good boy, so inquisitive and bright. Now, come on, don't be bashful. How old was he when he finally moved into the mansion with us? 6? Yeah, I think he was, about 6. And he'd run down to the other end of the estate, down to where they were building John Penn's home, and he'd watch the Italian stonecutters making those masterful cuts to build that mansion down there. And from there, he could also sit on the banks and look out over West Lebanon, and there he could watch the Union Canal boats coming down through, and they would unload and get onto the train. Now, it was Robert H., Dawson's brother, who actually built the railroad back to Cornwall. It ran about 7 miles. But Armour could sit there and watch all the goings-on. It was quite the transportation hub, you know. And the goods that went from the canal to the train went back to Cornwall. And what they did at the Cornwall furnace was make cannons and cannonballs, stoves, and salt pans. Stella, you took such good care of this place while we went to Philadelphia over the winter. I know it wasn't easy keeping the fires burning, but it sure did feel good to get away and visit with Mama's family. You're a good person, Stella. Well, I sure had my hands full with those Lebanon furnaces down over the hill. There was all that noise and smoke. I know it was part of the business, but what I minded most was those bright lights from that molten stuff going on, you know? Putting up that limestone wall out back was the best thing we'd ever done. It blocked the noise and the light, and I much preferred the look of the limestone over the furnaces. It was much cleaner. At any rate, we weren't talking about Armour, weren't we? I don't want to be at all about me. He was industrious, and after hours at the West End, watching the stonecutters and the canal boats and the trains, he'd come running back here all famished. But you didn't give him any slack. You made him run down the hill the other way, down to the garden, and you told him to bring back vegetables for dinner. So he'd go down there to Bill Jensen, our master gardener, and he'd collect all sorts of things. And it wasn't long before Armour was in that garden working right beside him, tending to the leeks and the beets and the okra and the peppers. He even learned how to grow mushrooms. He grew up a strapping young man, too. His blonde hair and John Penn's dark, they were quite the handsome group out there, just watching them going and coming. And when he got old enough, he loved driving that old Dodge. And he took it to the post office and picked up the mail and delivered it to all the family in the estate. I wonder if he would have been so eager if he had to ride a horse like the Pony Express riders. Probably not. At any rate, we're walking down memory lane today, aren't we? May I please have some more tea, Stella? You know,
There you go, Mrs.
thank you. It's been 7 years since Horace died. I don't know what I'd do in this big old house all alone if it weren't for you, Stella. We do keep each other company, don't we? Even Horace had his plate full for sure. He sent for his driver each day, John Feezer if I recall, to pick him up, and he'd be off for the day. Well, I didn't mind. I remember one time reading Proverbs 15, verse 15, and I believe it says, "A quarrelsome wife is like a constant dripping." I didn't want to be that kind of a wife. Besides, it gave me plenty of time to read my Bible and work with women in the community. The year after my Deborah was born, I worked with Mrs. Chandler Hare to form St. Catherine's Guild at St. Luke's Church. Whether it was tending to the men coming home from war or women bearing children, they needed a clean and peaceful place to recuperate, to rest and heal. Besides, if people came to what we called the Good Samaritan Hospital then, medics like Dr. Wise didn't have to run all over town tending to people. They could come to him. I think it was a win-win situation for everyone. Then in 1893, they appointed me to the Good Samaritan Hospital Board. Did you know that? I didn't tell too many people. I really thought it best to let the business end of things to the men. My real passion at age 39 was to support other women. That's when I founded the Women's Club at the Patriotic Sons of America. It was 1897, I think. Not only were there new mothers there who could learn child rearing from the older mothers, or the more skilled mothers, shall I say, but there were widows there too. And I could see the pain and loneliness in their eyes. Sitting home alone isn't good for anyone. Not everyone had a good confidant like you, Stella. Well, at the Women's Club, we did both fun and educational things. We supported the arts and education and nature, but the concerts, they were always a favorite of mine. Our club grew and grew. We even had to turn people away. That wasn't a good feeling, but we didn't have any more room. We had to do something. We were so successful the next year, I was appointed, or elected I should say, as president of the National Federation of Women's Clubs. It was an honor, but it took away from my travel overseas, which I so enjoyed. Visiting places like France, England, and Germany, I could see firsthand what worked in other cultures and what didn't. And I loved to bring craftsmen home with me. Some were quite eager to make a new life in America. I remember purchasing a figurine of a woman. It was cast. And they had statues all over Europe like that. And I thought, wow, with all the equipment and the furnaces we had, we should be able to do that in America. So I brought somebody back with me, and we started casting our own statues. I even donated a couple of them to the Women's Club. So the art form wasn't cheapened. I insisted upon the molds being broken after one good casting. That way, each sculpture was an original. In 1909, the same year that the New York Times did an article on me, I was involved in the anti-suffragette movement and became president in 1910. Then came World War I. It was 1914. My Horace died before the end of the year, and before the war was over. I so wanted peace for the world. It had been one war after the other. Well, maybe we should look into this voting thing for women after all. I had heard of a League of Women Voters, and in 1921, the Women's Club helped to get them started, right here in Lebanon. And the Women's Club also hosted the Daughters of the American Revolution, gave them a place to meet, and they ran the Tourist Bureau out of the Josiah Funk home. About that time, Bethlehem Steel purchased Pennsylvania Steel and the Northern Lebanon furnaces. What would I do with more money, Stella? Let's pray. Lord, please watch over our children. Let them be gifts to the world, full of love and joy and life and inspiration to others. Let mothers everywhere know how much they are valued for their comfort and ability to keep families together. Let widows know that their life still has meaning when their husbands pass on. You're not done with them yet. They can mentor the younger women and teach them how to be good mothers. For those of us who still have husbands, watch over them. Help our men to be good fathers and providers. Also, dear God, please keep our militias safe as they look out for our well-being. Let them know how much we appreciate their sacrifices to keep America strong. May their force be so strong that the world will take notice and be less likely to declare war against us. With peace on our soil here in America, we can honor and worship you in churches and bring honor and glory to you, Lord. Bless employees like Stella, Lord, for she and others like her shall inherit the earth. Finally, Lord, please guide me and give me strength to benefit of future generations of children. From the minerals in the ground to the clean water and good cropland this community has provided, so much for us as we earned a living beyond what we could ever imagine. It's a simpler life, worth protecting. In the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen.
Deborah lived another 11 years through the Great Depression and died in 1932 at the age of 74.